And it felt like not watching a movie, it felt like watching a window into the rest of the world of Star Wars. It just felt real.
There they are. Let me see.
That's no battle, hotshot. They're just sitting there.
Probably a freighter tanker refueling.
But there was a lot of firing earlier. Hey!
I tell you, Luke, the rebellion's a long way from here. This planet, big hunk of nothing.
I doubt if the Emperor would even fight to save the system.
Hey, you watch it.
Don't worry about it, Wormy.
Hello dear Star Wars fan, I'm Bernd Dötzer and I will use this opportunity to say a few words, a few minutes about what will come and what led to this happening, to this panel at the Norris Force Con 7 in Germany. I had my first touch with Star Wars in 1978 in Germany. My English is not very good, pardon me. I was 9 years old. And I didn't watch the movie in the cinema. I had the comic and the novel, and then I watched a Super 8 version, 25 minutes. And in 1982, I watched for the first time the complete length of the movie. So I was used to know the so-called deleted scenes. I didn't know they were deleted in a way. And after I grew up and worked in a video laboratory, I came on with editing in spare time. And in 1997, when the deleted scenes with Luke and Biggs were released, I came with the idea, oh, I want to take this into my personal Star Wars version. And there was an article in the Star Wars Insider, also in German one, about the lost cut. And yeah, it was the moment where I get known about Dr. David West Reynolds. He was the one who really went again to the places where the film was made in 1976 in Tunisia. And he was in the Star Wars archives. He was the one responsible that the deleted Luke Biggs scenes came to us after he had worked in the archives and discovered them and asked, oh, wow, couldn't we get them to the fans? And so I had with this article of the Lost Cut another wish to get more scenes into my extended version, not only the deleted scenes we know, but also what perhaps David said us and what the screenplays told and so on. So for example, through David's report, I created the following, which he told was in the Lost Cut but isn't in the final movie. Lord Vader, all scans are positive. The prisoner is the Princess of Alderaan, not a decoy. And Princess Leia should be destroyed immediately.
No, my first duty is to locate that hidden fortress of theirs.
As you see, it is simple made. I took the original material, edited different, gave new sound to it, and so I created a version which is now running 3 hours. So, with all this work from 1998 to now, at my extended version, I got in contact with people from the movies, behind the camera and actors and so on. And also with Irving Kershner, director of Empire Strikes Back. Also with Garrick Hagon, the producer, who liked my edits. Back then they were not so long as today. Both were open for fan edits, for let's look a little bit different if we take this material and make the version look, in a way you don't know it. So it's a kind of being open. And so I also was open for the idea I developed. well, I want the actors of these deleted scenes into a panel to reunite them. And this hadn't not before. So I knew Garrick Hagon, who played Biggs, and Anthony Forrest, who played Fixer. They gave sometimes panels. Koo Stark, the Biggs-Camie, did it one time, but they didn't do it together at one time. For the first time reunited, this was the idea. I tried it years ago, and last year there was another chance, perhaps the last I thought, so I tried again. I asked the 3 actors, and then I had the idea, wow, what about Dr. David West Reynolds if he hosts this panel? Because he is absolutely inside of this archaeologist. I don't know in English really the word, but he's a Star Wars #1 archaeologist. And I think that would be great. So I asked the chiefs of the Norris Force Con 7, and here is Ralph Ice Group, the chief #1, also known as Icy, but also the other chiefs. This is Laubi, Nussi, and we have Wolfgang and Thomas. Thank you very much. These were the persons who in the end say, okay, we do it for the fans. We make this reunion work. So we all gave our input. Decades ago it started, and now there was the one moment they reunited. I call it the Toshi gang. Well, Luke Skywalker is missing. Mark Hamill is in the moment a league too high. But Mark, if you watch this, next time we will have the complete
You'll always be the best friend I've ever had.
Toshi gang reunited, I hope. And, well, in my fan edit, George and Marshall Lucas, well, they are also part of the gang, so, wow, this would be great. So, for you fans, you get now a very, very short clip of David West Reynolds' panel, what he did. So you have, for these 4 of you who don't know, David? Now you know Bernd, okay, a little bit, David. And then you have the panel, which is really unique. For the first time they reunited. And when Star Wars is coming into the world, to the people, something happens. So it is also here. The panel went in a different way than thought. But that's life, and that's what we fans, well, love with Star Wars. And so I hope the Force may be with us. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. Bis irgendwann. Tschüss.
Back then it was a sandworm. Later it becomes a crate dragon. I wondered, could any of those still be there? Because Robert Watts had said, he said, oh, you remember the big dinosaur skeleton? It's out in the dunes. He said, well, you might find a piece of that because we just left it there. I said, wow, that's amazing. He said, well, we'll be blown halfway to Egypt by all the sandstorms by now, but you might find something. He said, but you won't find the skull. And I said, why is that? He said, because I've got it over my fireplace as a trophy. But I had a chance of finding those. I searched every dune field across southern Tunisia. It was a week and a half. I'd seen so much sand. And I finally realized I got to connect with the locals here. So the Berbers, they speak a different language than the Arabs. So I had to learn to be polite in Berber. And this guy was the guy who I'm showing them my bubblegum cards, which you look pretty crazy when you're showing bubblegum cards to a Berber tribal chieftain and explaining, I'm looking for the great dragon. But his son, this little kid, looked at the bones, and the kid thinks, I might have seen something like that. And the dad is like, my son knows the way. We will go. And I don't know if we're going to just see some dead camel or what, but we troop over the desert like Lawrence of Arabia, we get to the crest of the dune, and this guy says, you will go alone. And holds everybody else back, and what am I going to see? And it's bones, and it's fiberglass dinosaur bones, and it's the bones from Star Wars. And that, I went and gathered the pieces together, and that bone there, that's the first vertebra of that crate dragon skeleton, because it's all an accurate dinosaur skeleton. It had been borrowed. It was left over from a Walt Disney movie that had a big dinosaur skeleton in it. Roger Christian, the set decorator, had found it in an attic at the studio and said, "Can we use this?" And just grabbed it and took it to Tunisia and laid it out on the sand, rearranged it so it didn't look quite like a dinosaur. Everything in Star Wars is supposed to be a little off, so there's no legs. It's just some sort of strange creature.
And of course he is the guy who worked at Lucasfilm and worked during the time when the special edition was announced. So please give a huge round of applause for our MC today, Mr. David West Reynolds! We were just telling the audience why you're the MC for today's panel, because you're an expert on the matter.
Because I am the archaeologist of Star Wars, and that's not a very broad field. There's not too many competitors.
I think just you?
Yeah, just the one. But we have an opportunity that Norris Force Khan has made possible that's going to be historic. You guys are here for something special. I've been to a lot of Lucasfilm events. I worked at Skywalker Ranch for many years. But even I have never seen what is about to happen on this stage.
So we wish you much fun. Enjoy the panel for the reunion of the Toshi Station. Thank you, David, and have fun.
All right.
Enjoy.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, of course we can. Yes, we can join me, of course.
Yeah. Translation here now. All right.
All right.
So, can we have the first image up there? I think we've got the clicker here.
No, that's not it. There it is.
There we go. Toshi Station. Okay, this was the mystery of Star Wars. When I first saw the film, as a wee lad, there was no such thing as Toshi Station except in a mention of Luke Skywalker. All the real fans will know, but I was going to go into Toshi Station and pick up some power converters. Luke Skywalker telling his uncle that's what he wants to be doing. And that's the only reference in the original version of the film. So this was only showing up in things like a Star Wars storybook that had been published. So even then, I'm only this big, but I had an archaeologist's mindset. I wanted to know more about this fabulous world that George Lucas had created. What was Toshi Station? Who were Luke's friends? The original cut of the film won an Oscar because it was so brilliantly cut. This is a film that was wildly creative. George Lucas created an entire new galaxy. And yet, audiences around the world could relate to Star Wars because it was so easy to understand. George and the editors made the story easy to understand by making it like a normal story instead of a far-out science fiction kind of thing. People had normal problems. Luke wished that he was hanging out with his friends. So Toshi Station was a whole deleted scene. Real fans will know this, but to make sure everyone else understands, Toshi Station was a whole sequence that George Lucas had been pressured into writing to add to the script because some of his friends in filmmaking had told him, George, it's too complicated, it's a bunch of robots, nobody's going to care about those robots, George. They were kind of wrong on that. They said, you got to put in more human action. Your last film, American Graffiti, that was a proper movie, George. Put in some American Graffiti in your Star Trek thing. And he said, Star Wars. Yeah, whatever. Nobody's going to care about that. So George wrote in a scene for Star Wars that was very much like what he had just done with American Graffiti, based on his own childhood. So Toshi Station is the crossover between Star Wars and American Graffiti. It's the cross between George Lucas's imagination and his childhood. So it's a very special scene because it's a look into what George lived. George wrote about the things that were important to him. The original trilogy is about a broken family relationship. That's where George came from. He knew what it was like to have a broken family relationship. That's why it's at the heart of the film. He also knew what it was like to be the kid in your high school crowd that's not the cool one. Everybody around you is cooler. He understood that. And he wrote this scene to show, even in this galaxy far, far away, where there's incredible heroics, people just feel like, well, but I'm the normal one, I'm the boring one. But that's Luke Skywalker. That's the one who's going to have the greatest adventure of all. That's the message he's trying to put into the film. So he wrote this scene to ground his hero in the world of the ordinary. All of us know what it's like to be at school. Some of the friends making fun of us, people laughing. There's the cute girl that the guys all think, man, I wish I could go on a date, but she's too cute. I'll never get to date with her. He wrote those characters into Star Wars as a signal that the world may look fanciful that he's put onto the screen, but it's about you. It's about your world. It's about the kinds of decisions that you'll have to make, where you might be in a situation where everybody's making fun of you, but you've got something in you that you know made for something better. Maybe you're going to become an artist, maybe you're going to write something, you're going to create a company of a new idea. That's your hero's journey. George Lucas understood the mythic hero's journey that Joseph Campbell had discovered, an anthropologist who studied world mythology. And so George buried that myth underneath all the detail and the special effects and dazzle of Star Wars. And it's grounded in Toshi Station. So if it's all so great, why wasn't it in the film that I saw originally? And it became a deleted scene. Star Wars was edited so carefully to make this brilliant balance of action and make it comprehensible. And this wonderful scene of Luke Skywalker's normal life before fate and destiny come along and change everything. This is his normal life. It all goes on the cutting room floor. For years, nobody knew exactly why it had been taken out. Was it because the performances weren't great? What was the matter? Was it not a good scene? When I came into the picture, I ended up at Skywalker Ranch working for Lucasfilm, and I had the good fortune to have a protector at Lucasfilm, Rick McCallum, George's producer on the prequels. And Rick understood that if David West Reynolds is trying to get away with some crazy thing, he's got good intentions. So at Skywalker Ranch, there wasn't just the archive of the costumes and the models. There was an archive of film that was much harder to get into. And buried in that film archive was the deleted scenes. No one had seen this up to the time when, through Rick's permission, I got it out of the film archives. I shared it with Star Wars Insider, and because it came out, now it's been shared even officially. So now you get to see this, but there's all this other stuff there that I didn't get out to share with it, but we got to see it because I had that moment. So that's why I'm here introducing this to you, because I was the archaeologist of Star Wars, not only in Tunisia, but of the film, of the filmmaking. So that's what Toshi Station is. You see how it fits into the myth, how it fits into the filmmaking. Now, this is how it looked as a set. Here are the people. We got our hero, Luke Skywalker. He only wears that hat in these scenes, right? We don't see him in that hat in the final cut of the film. The point of the hat, so I've read online, people say, what's with the stupid hat? He looks terrible. Mark Hamill knew that it looked terrible. George Lucas knew. That's the point. In these scenes, Luke is the one who feels like he's the least cool of everybody. But he's still going to end up being the hero. That's a message for you. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're the least cool. You still might be the one who has something amazing to contribute. So the hat's there for a reason, to make him less cool than all of his friends. So the friends, each of them is important. We've got the guy here in the leather jacket, that's Fixer. He's the equivalent of the guy who fixes hot rods in the local...
He's the cool guy.
He's the Fonz from Happy Days. And he's got practically the same leather jacket you would see on the motorcycle riding guy. So Fixer's the guy with the motorcycle who's always going to get the cool chick. Behind him is Camie, his girlfriend, who's the impossibly cute girl that nobody but Fixer is going to get to date. And of course, Luke he's just fascinated with Camie, and she's like a million miles away. And they both give Luke a pretty hard time. And that's George telling us what his life was like. People gave him a hard time. He's a billionaire, right? We love him. People around the world respect George Lucas for what he brought into the world. But he suffered a lot. He didn't have an easy time in school or in his family, and in making Star Wars. I had George, just him and me and the documentary crew, in his office at Skywalker Ranch. And we were talking about his experience in making Star Wars. He felt like this Luke, not Luke at the helm of the X-Wing, Luke swinging across the chasm with Princess Leia. He felt like this Luke making the film. The cinematographer treated him badly. The special effects on set guy didn't treat him with respect. That's how he felt. So there's truth in this. That's why it's important. Now, balancing the hard, difficult, disappointing aspects of life is Biggs-Darklighter, Luke's best friend. This is the man he's a little older, he's gone off to the Space Academy to learn to be a pilot, to have a life. Luke is stuck here without a life. So that's these characters, which are much more important than the setting. So some of these people got discovered by Star Wars fans because now fans are the stewards of the myth. You attended this, Norris ForceCon put it on, and you came to support this. You are one of the stewards of the myth. You made things happen that Lucasfilm can't make happen. You and Norris ForceCon have brought these characters back together for the first time since they were shooting that scene in 1976.
Like 50 years, basically.
Right? 50 years since all three of Luke's friends have been reunited. That's what we're going to see here. So you've seen like Biggs-Darklighter, he was also an X-Wing pilot, so he was known. You see him at conventions. Even Anthony Forrest, Fixer, you see him once in a while. But Koo Stark, the impossibly cute girl, never see her. What has she done?
It's only her second convention.
It's only her second convention, and it wasn't an entire reunion of Toshi Station. So that's what you're about to see. So let's welcome first Garrick Hagon, Biggs-Darklighter. Garrick Hagon, please join us.
There he is.
Luke Skywalker's best friend. Garrick Hagon. Supported by a pilot escort as Biggs-Darklighter Red 3 ought to be.
First mate, Biggs-Darklighter at your service. And this is a tribute, as you can see, to my favorite wingman, Rolf. We are the Rebel Alliance. And I'm very proud of them all. And I'm very pleased to see you. And I hope we can tell you a few things about Tatooine and our life there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Garrick. Have a seat there, sir. Have a seat, you like?
And now big applause for our rebel pilots over there.
Yeah, thank you, pilots. All right, now, the Fixer, the cool guy, the Fonz of Star Wars, the guy with the leather jacket, Anthony Forrest. This is a multi-talented actor who, in addition to being the Fixer, he's the stormtrooper gets to do the whole scene with Obi-Wan, and are these the droids you're looking for? Has that ever been sorted out? Were these the droids? There was some kind of confusion?
As we talked before, if I had stopped the droids and said I found the droids, the whole movie would have ended there, and we wouldn't be here today.
So it was really a wise decision for him to let those go, I think, right?
Yeah. So it was just a moment where I decided, no, I haven't found the droids. Go ahead.
Thanks for letting us having a good movie then.
All right, so both these gentlemen have been kind enough to come to conventions before and let the fans meet them. But this has not happened. The impossibly cute girl that only the Fixer could date, Camie, actress Koo Stark, will join us. This is the first time these three performers have been reunited, and it's only because of Norris Forrest Koo. So enjoy this. This is the Toshi Station reunion.
It's a wonderful opportunity for us all to be together again and have such diverse memories and be egging each other on a bit. Do you remember this? No. Do you remember that? Yes. And it's really a joy to be here, and it's a joy to see you all and share this amazing experience with you. It feels like coming home, really, it does. So thank you so much for all your love and encouragement, and that's the reason we're here.
So the three of them got the job on this film when nobody really had a clear picture of what this was going to be, right? When you got the job, how much of a sense did you have of what is it that this George Lucas was trying to make? How clear of a picture did you have before you actually came to shoot the location shoot?
Absolutely no picture at all. We could hardly understand these creatures. R2, what? C3, what? And I got the script, and I was doing another show, put it on the makeup table, and said, I don't know what it's about, but I'm going to do it. And then I proceeded to read it. I knew a little bit more, and hopefully by the time I arrived on the plane with Koo and Anthony, I knew a little bit more about the scene, and the rest was going to be up to George. And we were like three people going into an adventure. And it really was to go to Tunisia for a start, hot weather for another, and just to land in there like a holiday. And the first thing Mark said to me was, it doesn't matter what he says, I'm going to have a hard time learning this. And Mark said, it doesn't matter what you say as long as you say it fast with intensity. And you can say pass the peanut butter. Well, as it turned out, maybe we did, but we had a few days holiday before.
Anthony, how much did you know about the role that you were asked to play? You ended up playing two roles, and a very prominent one behind the mask, but you were originally brought in just to play he was the Fixer in the early notes. He's the guy. How much did you know about the production? What kind of expectations did you have when you showed up in Tunisia?
It wasn't so much expectations. I mean, I'd read through the screenplay, so I had a little bit of an understanding of what the character of the Fixer is. I mean, when you have the smaller roles, often you have to, you're required to do a lot of invention yourself and to add elements to it yourself, because there's not a lot of explanation in the dialogue. You kind of follow what the sequence of events are happening and what is occurring around the character. And so you start to build your own, use your own imagination to bring things to it. But I was a little bit fortunate that I knew about American graffiti. And you have to remember in 1976, when we were going to be filming, American Graffiti hadn't reached the United Kingdom yet. The process of filmmaking at that time was the film was made, it was released in the United States and in Canada, etc. And it would travel then across the Atlantic 6 months later. So there was a delay. We didn't have streaming or anything, as you can appreciate. So in the UK, people weren't really aware of American Graffiti. So I'd been back and forth, and I actually had an understanding of what American Graffiti had become, and the fact that Lucas was on his way as a new director in terms of Hollywood. So I had a little inclination of where it might be going. But in terms of the science fiction, that was something that came around, which was very special, because George Lucas, like a lot of other directors at the time, Richard Donner and Steven Spielberg, they were fascinated with a movie that was made in the United Kingdom, which was called 2001: Space Odyssey. And they were fascinated with the idea that you could go to space and it would feel real. And it would feel not like in the 1950s, where many of the science fiction stuff was basically paper plates on a string. And all of a sudden, Stanley Kubrick had given us this moment in cinema where we actually had a real feeling of an element of being there.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of the filmmakers, the young filmmakers in Los Angeles, wanted to take their productions to the UK. And they wanted to work with the crews that had worked with Stanley Kubrick, and they wanted to be in that environment. Elstree Studios, which is where most of the first film was filmed, was where Stanley Kubrick actually filmed 2001: Space Odyssey. So there was a definite influence that was coming through in terms of that, working with the crews and working with the cinematographers and other people. Those young directors all wanted to be there to experience what Stanley Kubrick had created in 2001. So there's a fantastic history. Like everything, we're creating mythology, and that's what the young directors are doing. They're creating a mythology and following in Stanley Kubrick's mythology at the time.
That's great that you had that background. And as Anthony was saying, when you get a character who doesn't have a lot of lines, it does end up being a lot of work that the actor may or may not bring to the role. We were really lucky in the case of these characters. When I got that footage out of the film archive and I opened this package that Rick McCallum had sent to me where I was at the time, nobody knew how the performances were. And I had people say, it must be that the performances, were not quite up to par. And I had no idea. All I knew was that I'd seen Biggs' Darklighter in these stills, and Biggs was just so cool. These scenes had to be good, I hoped. And I watched the scenes, and it felt like not watching a movie. It felt like watching a window into the rest of the world of Star Wars. It just felt real. Because the way, if you've seen these deleted scenes as they've been shared, there's not the music, there's not the full Ben Burtt sound effects treatment. It just looks like a documentary film of the real character, Luke Skywalker, and his regular life, seeing something in the sky that he thinks is a space battle and his friends think probably not. And you think maybe that's his only brush up against fate and destiny, and maybe he'll miss it. And to watch these scenes unfold and see that the performances were just amazing, I loved it. And that's why I thought these have to be shared somehow. So it's the actors bringing that invention that makes Fixer feel real. And he's this mechanic guy, but he's smart enough to have this opinion about, I doubt whether the Empire would even fight to save the system. And he just throws that away. And the way Anthony delivers it, he's not like mugging for the camera. Here's my line, and I doubt whether the Empire would even fight to save the system. That's the 1950s science fiction. That's how they talk a lot of the time. It's time for us to get back to the saucer. Do you have your ray gun? So to have these characters deliver with the perfect reality that we'd seen of a film like American Graffiti, that was a combination that we'd never seen before.
It's just an exchange between friends looking at a normal situation that occurs from time to time, so yeah.
One of the things that I tried to kind of understand with Fixer's character is the fact that Here we are in this very remote region, so it's like living in a small town in the middle of nowhere. And Fixer was not necessarily interested in what was going on in the galactic universe because he was already set up. He had Toshi Station, he had a gig that he was working on, and unlike the others, he had a girlfriend. And so he didn't need to go anywhere.
I don't know about that. I've learned from the comic book that I actually had a girlfriend in my career. I think her name was Kenji. I think I just read the comic about my life on the round ecliptic, and I learned about my girlfriend.
See, Star Wars is a process of self-discovery for us all. So, Koo, how about yourself? Now, you had a background in acting. How did you get into this role, and what were your expectations when you came to Biggs-Camie-Fixer?
Well, I originally was called in for a casting to read for George for the part of Princess Leia. And Camie wasn't in the script I read. So there was, he was recasting the lead role because Carrie Fisher had not signed her contract. She was in Los Angeles and they were holding out for more money. So George was already beginning to film and he had to either Carrie had to accept the role or he had to recast. So he called a casting agent, a well-known casting agent, and she had a casting, and a number of other actresses were called for the role to play an American princess. So off we trundled, said hi, everybody else was competing for the role. I read, he said, I'd love to work with you, so you've got the role. This is marvelous. Nobody knew it was going to be the huge success it was. It was just, you're up for another job, it's great, get the job. Go home later that night, and in those days there was something called a telex machine. So there wasn't instant communication. So obviously Carrie Fisher's agent heard that George was holding a casting, and they signed the contract. And so he called me that evening and said, so sorry, but Carrie signed the contract. I said, oh well, thank you so much, maybe another time. But he said, no, I want you to come and work on this film. I said, but George, I've just read the script. There's no other role for a young girl. It's my movie. I'll put you in. So I said, okay, great. He said, can you come to Tunisia? I said, absolutely. So off I went to Tunisia, and literally with no role. So he said, yeah, this is it. This is Camie. You're going to play Camie, and this is Anthony Forrest, and he said, basically, take it away. Do your thing. Because it wasn't really a role that was pertinent to the rest of the movie. This was background for Luke Skywalker's life pre-Star Wars, pre-going on to the war. So we had to figure out, well, what is the nature of the relationship? Obviously, we had a little tension going between myself and Luke Skywalker in character because that worked. That he wanted the girl he couldn't get. And so, I was very happy with my boyfriend. There was no way I was going anywhere. But I was happy to tease him, a little bit. So basically, we just had fun. And we weren't, there weren't very many restrictions. Like, for instance, if you do theater or something, you're very restricted. You have your absolute lines, you have your absolute scenes, everything's mapped out before you go onto the set. And in a lot of films, it's like that too, because it's very expensive to shoot films, so it's not very often that you get the opportunity to basically improvise, have fun while we're filming it, And so it was really great working with you. I really enjoyed the whole time of being in Tunisia. It was an amazing experience. And because we were all together day and night, we got very close, and we had this alternative experience, basically. So I didn't expect on Star Wars, once my job with Star Wars finished, that it would be anything other than this moment, this magical moment in my life, in my box of very special memories, very far away from normal daily life. Get back to London, in my case I went back to London, and back to sort of normal life. Obviously the film then was edited, and those scenes were edited out, so I actually wasn't in Star Wars, although, so there was no mention of me in the credits. I'm not in the original film, Anthony, and I think you are as a stormtrooper, but scenes were cut. So I didn't think much of it at the time, because that was just, that's the job of the editor, is to decide what works for the film and what doesn't, and apparently this didn't work. And I understood, because of my original experience, that there really wasn't a big role for Camie. There wasn't another role apart from Princess Leia, really, for that age. But I was very, very surprised when it was 2017, when I came here to Germany. I was invited to do some signing, and it was the first time I hadn't really been. I'd had an experience in my life which left me shy of publicity, very shy of being out in public at all. So I never responded to any invitations to come and do this, or come and appear there, or come to a public event until I think it was
2017, yeah, in Oberhausen.
Thank you. When I came, and of course reconnected with Anthony, and I'm signing as I am, as I have been, and lovely people, and I was so amazed and so touched and really, really moved to see that, a film I was associated with, a film I was in, had affected so many people in such a beneficial way, and opened so many minds and so many hearts to the many possibilities that we have in each of our lives, to be any of these characters, to take these brave steps and go on an adventure. And I thought that was really, really wonderful. But what confused me a bit is, how was I suddenly, from having been left on the cutting room floor, snip, snip, there goes. So I wasn't in Star Wars, but yet suddenly, here I am, part of Star Wars again. Well, what had happened, of course, was that, and Anthony will explain it to you in more detail, it was in fact, Anthony came through the door, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, and said, have you seen this, and have you seen that? And basically what happened is, we were being merchandised, so...
And this was just a surprise. Imagine what it feels like to have someone come and say, hey, your action figure looks really good. It's news to me.
Absolutely news to me. I mean, some of the photographs, obviously, I recognized as having been on set, and that was very nice in the thing. But I didn't know about the toys. I didn't know about the trading cards, about the t-shirts, the teacups, the whole massive merchandising. He comes and says, did you know about this? I said, no, absolutely, hand on heart, didn't know about it, never signed a contract, nothing to do with me. Who's getting the money for this? So I decided I would come this year specifically to ask for legal help. Because where do you start? This is a global film. The merchandising is global. I'm thrilled to be associated with Star Wars, and I'm thrilled that there's so much merchandise out there. And I'm really happy to see you all with the t-shirts, and I'm happy, so happy to have the connection. But I think it would also be a little nice if, if they could pay for your performance on Disney streaming. There it is, all revived. And I'm not dead yet. So anyway, I'm going to have that.
It's a bit like you guys get showing around without you knowing it.
Well, it's kind of like, I don't know what it is. It's like a second life, okay? Because they put us back out there again, and thank you so much. You seem to love what we did. I'm really, really...
But just without talking to you first.
But exactly. It would have been so nice, to ask first would have been very nice.
And wouldn't it have been great to see these characters revived, to find out what happened to them? Right? Isn't that great? So we want to see that happen.
In the process, we've gone from the sands of Tunisia and and into a modern sphere, but I'm way back with the beginning of the adventure that we had going to that, since we sat there in front of the set. And I've learned in the last few days through David, who's been digging in the sands around a place called Jerba in Tunisia. I've learned of the genesis of some of the knowledge that David has. He has a full description of that mosque that I was playing in front of with the wonderful Mark. And I think in the process of the beginning of this scene, one of the finest and most helpful things was Mark's attitude to the rest of us as newcomers. And he was a newcomer to you. He wasn't that experienced in film. He was a young actor who knew how to treat his fellow actors. And also he just did it naturally because he's a gregarious, genial, and unselfish actor. And that helped me enormously, immediately when I met him, to relax into the part of his best friend. I felt he could be, and he felt I could be his best friend. In fact, they said, "You have the best part. You die." And I looked at what was the first copy of the Journal of the Wills, which is what the whole trilogy was going to be called, or the whole sequence of books. And it was called the Journal of the Wills, and I looked and it didn't mean anything to me, but that was the beginning of this whole saga, but we didn't know where it was going to go. So it was Mark that held us together, and held us together as a team. So I'm only giving him this tribute because he still remains a friend, and still remains as brilliant a man as you could hope for.
For Mark Hamill. One of the interesting things with Star Wars is, as David is rightly pointed out, it is steeped in mythology. And the mythology in Star Wars teaches you, and this is, I think, one of the things that's such an attraction to the fans and everybody who's basically really started to understand the depth of Star Wars, is one of the things it teaches you is the fact that we all have these hero's journeys. We don't know when they're going to come to us or when they're going to approach us. That hero's journey could be helping a friend who has problems, could be helping your children, could be helping your parents. These are hero's journeys that come to us, and it is up to us to make that choice of whether we rise to the challenge. And so when these issues came around with the deleted scenes and that, and the marketing and the exploitation that was being done, it was really a fan who introduced me, interestingly enough, to the fact that I should start to take a look at what was going on. It wasn't me going and saying, "Oh, I want to know what's going on," because I thought everything was okay. It was actually a fan who wrote to me and said, "Oh, it's really nice to see Fixer and Camie in the Book of Boba Fett." And I thought, how did we end up in the Book of Boba Fett, right? Nobody even told us about this. Nobody contacted us. And it was that inclination that I just decided I wanted to know what my contracts, and all of our contracts actually said.
And when you signed a contract, did your contract, when you signed it, have anything to say about merchandising or?
That's what when I went back in. There's two levels of contract. There's one which is only 2 pages, and then there's one which is some 15 to 18 pages, which we never saw. So I presumed all along that everything was included in that, what you call an underlying agreement. What I did discover when I finally got the underlying agreement from Lucasfilm, there is nothing in there whatsoever to do with merchandising or reuse rights or derivative rights. It was not a work for hire agreement. So they had no right to do anything they did, not only for Koo or for myself or for Garrick, but for any of the other actors
were working on the film, that they made toys and they used or promoted their likeness, they didn't have the rights to do that.
Oops.
So these are the early films that, of course, it came to their attention and they changed it later on. Then the American contracts are different from the British ones, but we are completely being ripped off.
And so I had to make that decision because there's an expression, I think you've probably heard of it. I cannot unsee what I have seen. And that expression really revolves around so many things that we experience which are traumatic in our lives or not so traumatic. But I could not unsee what I had seen in the contracts. And I had to raise that issue and raise those questions. And so at the end of the day, I felt I was compelled, just for the sake of justice for everybody, to file a lawsuit in Los Angeles against Lucasfilm and Disney and Apple and Warner Brothers and Topps and Hasbro, and to take them to court to actually say, where do you think you have the right to actually do what you're doing without having the authorization from the artists that you need to have. It is not enough to say that you have those rights, and for everybody to, as you would see, for all the other companies that signed up to it, to believe you have the right, prove that you have those rights. And so that's when I decided to go to court, and I actually filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles.
So there was a response to this query, and the response came in the form of a letter saying, we don't need a contract to exploit you and Ms. Stark, because it's industry standard.
Ouch.
So that's like saying, well, we know what that's like saying I can break the law because everybody else does. But unfortunately, we're not going to accept that. So, and there's so many of us. I mean, it has been an industry standard. It's shocking. So we're looking for a lawyer, and we're looking for any other exploited artists.
Yeah, and one of the things, and this is what I've, over the years, attending some fan events, that one of the things that I've always been personally amazed is the talent that is involved in the Star Wars community. And so I know there are many artists, whether you're creating replica toys, or whether you're creating your own ideas, you're creating your own stories, and doing your fan films and that, you are artists as well. And so it's these kind of situations where the artists are not being treated fairly or justly, even though you have a contract, basically, that says you're not allowed to do that to us, that all artists, this kind of story, or this kind of journey that we've kind of find ourselves on, relates not only to us, but it relates to all actors in the industry. And one of the things that we're seeing now is the fact that we're also now faced with AI and artificial intelligence. Because when it was presented to me with the book of Boba Fett, I immediately thought, oh, they've CGI'd us into another series. And so by not having permission to do anything with that, this becomes illegal. And as it has been pointed out by barristers and lawyers and that, it's called fraud. And that's what all artists are fighting against, or have to fight against, is the fact that fraudulent use of their talent, or the fraudulent use of their performance, or the fraudulent use of their art, or their music, or their expression, or their self-expression, you own those rights. And when you sign a contract, the contract has to say they're allowed to use those rights. But when the contract doesn't allow them to use those rights, then that requires you to have to go and fight and take the hero's journey.
So, right? Now, I want you to think about what you just heard and the characters that we saw. Now, dear George Lucas, whom we all love, is not famous for being really helpful to the actors, right? He's not, he doesn't direct a whole lot in a supportive way, is what I've been hearing. But is that
often the best help is not to be there at all.
To
be a long way away.
Yes.
And in fact, George gave us quite a bit of space. He was right down at the end of the bay there, the rocks shooting from the long way. But yeah, he probably did say, I don't think he said faster with intensity.
But what I wanted to point out was I think this is balanced by one of George's, he does so many things so well that it can get lost in all the different ways in which he's a genius. One of his special talents is that he's really good at casting just the right person for the character so that he doesn't need to do a lot of direction. So what I think I just heard is that we don't know the future of those characters from the deleted scenes, but we have actors who are to a great degree like those characters because George chose very carefully for everything. When I was writing the visual dictionaries, it was down to a nut or a bolt that if I had a question, George had an opinion. He sees Star Wars very precisely. So he really cares about it, and in crafting a film, he chooses his performers very carefully to be harmonic with the characters. So what I think I just heard is that after this scene, it sounds to me like Fixer ends up deciding to join the fight against the Empire.
You never saw that at the Academy.
You don't really get the name Fixer and not try to fix something. So it's you kind of get handed that role.
And Camie is someone who is supportive and encouraging of what the Fixer does. And Anthony has been the one who's taken up this challenge kind of unwillingly because it's forced on you. And you've been very supportive of that, right?
So they go, you can do it, how's it going, you can do it, go on.
But even,
I'll join you when I've got a lawyer.
But even the best fixer needs a group of friends to help.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all here for. So you heard those two, or three, and they need your help. They need your help.
So what you've heard today is a story in reality. And so the best thing you can do is get on the internet and tell everybody what you heard. Because that's the kind of support. That's the truth. That's the reality of this journey. We have the power as the people together to be able to change the system. And the system needs changing. It needs changing because we're not the only ones just in Star Wars, but there are many other actors who have been affected in the films they've been involved with and have been left out of the benefits of the success stories that they've helped to create. So I would ask you to get on the internet and share it and spread it as far and wide as you can, because I know the Star Wars community is very powerful.
There's a line in the scene that says, "The rebellion is spreading, and I want to be on the right side."
I didn't file it only in my own name. I filed it as other actors who were affected and the estates, that means those actors who have been deceased, the estates of the other actors as well. Because I know that those other actors, Angus McGuinness, who passed away in last year, it was only weeks before I had been in Nashville, Tennessee with Angus, and Angus said to me, "I want to be involved in the lawsuit." And then make sure that, involve me in it. And it was only weeks later that Angus passed away. And so I know from just the relationships and from the people I've talked to, and that is one of the things that is interesting. While the actors haven't benefited financially in many cases because they're no longer with us, then at least their children or their families or their grandchildren should have the opportunity to benefit as well.
Agreed.
That's their legacy. And they should be part of that legacy.
But and the legacy also for us is you guys, is the kind of support and love and feedback we get around the world. And everybody normally mentions that, all the actors, when they gather or when they're at a convention. And that's really one of the bonuses that we carry with us. It's not all negative. It's not at all negative. But this,
well, it is one of the
positivity.
It is now transpired that if you ask who owns Star Wars, I said the fans do.
Yeah.
The fans own it.
That's the proof of that is that these three people are here together, and that could not have happened any other way except here. And Germany brought Koo back into the fold, right? I mean,
absolutely.
So that's a special role that you have played here. That's the illustration of the fact that you can change reality. You shape Star Wars now. And Star Wars has shaped your life, it's shaped all of our lives. The myth that Anthony talked about, it's at the heart of it. That's you deciding who you want to be and doing something that you believe in with that power. So this amazing opportunity that we've had belongs to you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Carry the spirit of this with you out there and be on the side that you believe in.
Be brave and do the right thing. Have time for questions? We're not doing questions.
Doing questions, I just want to make sure our time. How much time?
We're almost out of time, so I'm afraid we cannot have time for any questions.
Well, bring your questions
to the
table.
To the performers. We got the tables. We'd love to hear them, so I hope we'll see you there.
And if you have a lawyer, bring him to the
Thanks for hosting this panel, of course. Maybe we can bring up Nessie again. Is Nessie there? So we can rearrange the order of the MCs. Nessie? No, she's not here. She will join us later. But thank you very much for doing this. This was an important message. And we see you around as well. And you show us more stuff at your booth. Thank you very much.